Hello and welcome to today's UK Column News. It is Wednesday the 22nd of April and just after 1 o'clock, and I'm delighted to say today I'm joined by Scott Tipps. Scott, are you with us?
I am. Thank you, Mike.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Scott Tipps, of course, chairman, isn't it, of the National Health Federation? President, apologies. And we'll be talking in just 1 second. Weather around the country, I think, absolutely wonderful as usual, and even in Plymouth. We mentioned this article yesterday, Scott, and we said we would bring it up today. And in fact, you mentioned it to me this morning before we came on air. Too many vitamins can give you cancer, according to a new study. And of course, the headline itself perhaps a little misleading, because this was some work done by a Dr. Tim Byers, who was examining research papers spanning 30 years, looking actually at only 3 supplements, vitamin E tablets, beta-carotene and folic acid, and warning against exceeding recommended daily amounts. But I think we know who sets those recommended daily amounts. And he said, we're not sure why this is happening, but evidence shows that people who take more dietary supplements than needed tend to have a higher risk of developing cancer. So what is your view of this, Scott?
Well, frankly, it's the usual disinformation that's being put out there by the mainstream media, and it's complete nonsense. There are thousands, many tens of thousands actually, of studies, well, certainly thousands, that show that vitamins and minerals in their proper form, and it's important to know we're talking about the proper form, help people to avoid getting cancer. They do not give them cancer. They help you avoid cancer. If you just go to the Vitamin D Council, COUNCIL.com website, you will find hundreds, if not thousands, of references, many of which will show the enormous benefit, all of which will show the benefits of vitamin D, the natural form vitamin D3, and will show that in many of those instances they help prevent cancer. It's already been shown that taking vitamin D3 reduces, at a high enough level, will reduce the risk of women getting breast cancer by 25%, will reduce the risk of prostate cancer and the rest. But Mike, you pointed out a very important fact, and that is that this Tim Byers, who's from Colorado, by the way, he is looking at just 3 vitamins. He's not looking at a full range. And I guarantee you that the studies he looked at used the wrong form of the vitamins as well. I mean, often when they do a test, the establishment will use the worst possible form of the vitamin. We should all know that there are many different forms. For example, magnesium citrate is not the same as magnesium oxide, not in its effect. And with vitamin E, you can have D-alpha tocopherol, you can have DL-alpha tocopherol. One is the synthetic and the other is the natural. And the natural in almost every instance will work better than the synthetic form. But almost always these studies are on the synthetic form that doesn't work as well, or they're at dosages that are far too little, or they have additives in them that are the actual cause of the cancer. It's not the vitamin. It's sort of my story that I give about the gentleman walking across the street, and in his pocket is a bottle of vitamins. He gets run over by a lorry, and of course they blame the death on the vitamins because they happen to be in his hip pocket. And so this is what the media tends to do. The guilty suspect is almost always the vitamin, and this is what Byers has done. Now, another important point, let me add this in, is I did a little research yesterday after I saw this story on our Dr. Tim Byers, and you know, he's on a number of advisory boards. The Colorado School of Public Health is his forte, and there's the Center for Public Health Practice. There are any number of positions that he occupies. He was formerly, up until 1995, chief of the Chronic Disease Prevention Branch of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in Atlanta, Georgia. He holds himself out as an expert in cancer prevention. He's published a lot of papers in peer-reviewed scientific journals, which gives him some air of authority. But in fact, he's board of the American Cancer Society, which has never found a cure for cancer, never will, and is just sort of a self-promoting society that spends a lot of money, uh, uh, on administration and not really on a cure. They focus on drugs and that sort of approach, vaccines, but it's the wrong alley. He's also on the board of the Colorado Foundation for Public Health and Environment, which is funded by Pfizer, by the Open Society Foundation, i.e. George Soros, by some health plans, one of the most major ones in the U.S., and the Cancer Treatment Centers of America. You can be sure they don't want their business to be, done away with. So they're funding this guy. You can see where his money comes from. So if you follow the money, you will see what he is all about. So of course he's going to find that vitamins are above the RDA, are causing trouble. Of course he's going to see this, and that's what they want. They want people to scare people away from true health, to taking charge of their health, from doing things that will keep them out of the hospital and out of doctors' offices and away from jabs of injections, vaccines, and the like. So this is very, very typical, and it's just yet another sign of what they're doing. And if anything, it should cause people to run into the arms of vitamins and minerals, because that is truly what will help save you from cancer, is just that. And people who have been taking vitamins are shown to live longer. There's the ultimate proof right there. If you're taking multivitamins, you live longer than those who don't. And if you take the ones, as I do, and maybe you do, Mike, as well, that you arrange yourself, then you live even longer than those who take multivitamins. So it's very important to continue doing this and to disregard this sort of mainstream propaganda.
Well, indeed, because cancer seems to be becoming an industry almost. The latest the statistics have been rising almost on a monthly basis. The latest statistics published today, I saw I can't remember which newspaper, were saying that it's now expected that 2/3 of us are going to contract cancer. Contract perhaps isn't the right word, and yet there's more and more money being spent and gathered for cancer research and finding. Supposedly finding cures for cancer, which never actually appear. And indeed, perhaps echoing what you've just said, the Telegraph here today pointing out that 2 in 3 cancer sufferers have other health conditions. And it really just echoes the fact that so many of us are in chronic bad health generally, which can only result in this type of problem. So they're saying people with cancer also have chronic heart disease and other chronic illnesses like this. And it's really not a surprise, is it?
Off the microphone.
Yes.
When you speak, I put it on mute so I don't interrupt you. So I'm sorry, I put it back on. It's to pick up where I was talking without a true voice here. This is kind of funny because the treatments for cancer often cause heart problems. Chemotherapy, if you look at the caution pamphlet for it, will actually indicate that can cause heart problems. You will look and see that, and often what happens is they will give chemotherapy to a cancer patient, and eventually that cancer patient actually dies in many instances from heart failure. And then they can claim success. Hey, didn't die of cancer, but of course the drugs that they gave that person did cause heart failure. For instance, even the so-called preventative treatments such as statin drugs are known to cause heart problems and actually can lead to heart attacks because it cuts off the production of coenzyme Q10, which is very important for heart health. The same mechanism that cuts off the production of cholesterol, that is by the statin drugs in your body, will also cut off your production of sex hormones, so your sex drive goes to zero, and will cut off the production of coenzyme Q10, which is an important part of your health. So for your heart. So this is why they can ascribe, heart attacks and other things as independent agents, when in fact it really was the cancer treatment that killed the person.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're going to move subjects here, because we're going to talk about the National Health Federation, which is your organization. And this is your website. It's the nhf.co.uk for the UK website anyway. And if you can get to the worldwide website from this one. And this is your 60th anniversary, so congratulations on that. I'm sure many of the people on this program or watching this program will be aware of some of the work that you do, but just give us a brief overview of what the NHF is all about and what your work is in particular.
Well, thank you. We're all about protecting your right to better health and to the better health treatment of your choice. That's really where we're at, and have been for 60 years uninterrupted. And we've been quite successful at times in doing this. Of course, we've had our failures like anyone else, but we've also had many successes. We are also the only health freedom organization that's accredited by Codex Alimentarius, the worldwide body that's creating food standards and guidelines. We're the only ones accredited to be present and actively participate in those meetings. And that's what we do and have been doing for nearly 20 years now. And I myself have been I'm on my 16th year of going to a Codex meeting, and am about to go as well. But NHF, we have a very active branch in the UK, NHF UK, headed by Emma Curry and with the assistance of Sylvia Gray and James Harkin, and others. And we are putting on an event this Saturday, April 25th in Manchester at the Friends Meeting House in Manchester on 6 Mount Street from 10 in the morning until 5 p.m. and then afterwards retire for a social hour or 2 or 3. And we invite anyone in the area to go. Now, the tickets are £35, but it does include lunch, and it does include a wide number of speakers, some of whom are rather fabulous. I mean, much more so than I. David William Gibbons is our keynote speaker, and he's outrageously good. Thomas Sheridan, everyone knows about Thomas Sheridan. He wrote the book Puzzling People, The Labyrinth of the Psychopath, talking about pathological and sociological dynamics. David Noakes will be speaking about his problems in Guernsey with GCMAF, with the authorities coming down hard on him and trying to put him out of business. Darren Diogi will speak on Heal Thy Mind, and then I will speak about Codex and some other things of that sort, general issues, and so we look to have a very good turnout, and it's a big place, and it'll be a great place to interact with other people and to get to know others and network, and to speak directly with the speakers as well. So we're hoping people will go. Again, it's going to be this Saturday in Manchester at the Friends Meeting House. It's a Quaker facility there, and it's very nice, right in the heart of Manchester. And its address is 6 Mount Street. And you can buy tickets at the door, or you can go to the nhf.co.uk website, that is THE, and then our initials, nhf.co.uk. And it'll be a fabulous event, so I hope everyone will be there. And we'll present some new information as well, such as I will talk a little bit about this 3-bromopyruvate, which has also been shown to be destructive cancer cells, cancer tumors in particular. So we really look forward to people being there. And if you can't be there, then please spread the word so others will be there, and we can have a great networking event. But in any event, this is, our way of celebrating our 60th anniversary in Manchester. Next month, we'll have a similar event with our group, NHF Sweden, and we hope to do one in Ireland. But in the meantime, this is the biggest event this side of the Atlantic. And so we really do hope people will be there and can go to our website, thenhf.co.uk, and you'll see all the information right there in front of your face, and you can get a program as well.
So I have to say, I'm not aware, I'm embarrassed to say, I'm not aware of David William Gibbons. What is he going to be speaking about then?
Well, he really speaks in kind of broad stroke terms. He's really a fantastic, he's down in near Stonehenge is where he is. And he's a broadcaster, historian and writer, and he has a radio program that goes out, as does yours, Mike, to many millions of people. And what he has done is he tries to piece together in broad strokes how we can make this planet better. So he will be talking about, in kind of a multimedia fashion, about his dialogues with astronauts Edgar Mitchell, Dr. Brian O'Leary, and others. And he will try to piece together what would be a good way for all of us, for humanity, to advance forward on this planet and to save our planet, really, from the people who are doing it harm.
And what are the latest developments on Codex then? I don't really want to take too much away, maybe, if you're going to be announcing new stuff at the conference, but what can you tell us?
Oh no, I can definitely share that with you, Mike, and with your listeners. The main things that have happened since, really since last October, have been the watering down of the organic standards. And keep in mind, again, for those listeners of yours who may not be familiar with Codex Alimentarius, this is a body that's been around not as long as NHF, but about 52 years. And it is responsible for creating the standards and guidelines for food and drink throughout the world. So whatever happens at Codex can, at least in theory and more likely in actuality, affect 7 billion people on this planet, or however many people actually inhabit the planet. We really don't know. And a Frenchman said it might really only be 6 billion. But in any event, whatever that true number is, this affects them, and it affects them in a very personal and kind of an immediate way. So this is why it's so important. So these watering down of the organic standards by the Codex Committee on Food Labeling is really a matter of concern. And at the meeting last October in Rome that I went to, I argued, along with the delegation of India, against allowing that, simply saying that something is natural, or saying is something is natural, that you can use natural ingredients, and I put quote marks around that word, will allow you to still call it organic, because this is sort of the camel's nose in the tent to allow non-organic ingredients to then feed organic animals or to help grow organic crops. And it's just not to be permitted. So India and I spoke out against it, India and NHF, as well as the exculpatory language that they wanted to insert in there about, well, organic cannot account for all the environmental contaminants that are in there. So see, this is their way to slough off on environmental contaminants, deliberate additions or ignorance where they allow other things to seep into organic foods, and this we cannot have. But the sad thing about it is, at that committee meeting, the Canadian chairman, Paul Myers, who's outgoing, he's no longer the chairman, and certainly won't be for the next meeting, but he contended that Codex, this is almost an exact quote, Codex must adapt to industry practices. That's why we're doing this. And our position at NHF is no. Industry needs to adapt to healthy and hygienic practices. That's the way it works. It's not that we lower our standards, it's that the industry should raise its standards. Yeah. That's what we're about at NHF. One is promoting better health. The other is promoting better health freedom for individuals to go out and make choices, and a wide range of choices for their own betterment. So that's what happened at that meeting. And then a month later, I was in Bali for the NHF Codex. I'm sorry, for the Codex meeting there. I was there for NHF and the Codex meet on nutrition. And we had a great victory there where 5 years earlier we had turned aside an attempt to dumb down the recommended daily allowance for vitamin C from 60 milligrams, which is already ridiculously low, to 45 milligrams, and stopped it almost single-handedly, again with the help of India and, believe it or not, with the delegation of Iraq chiming in on our behalf as well. I shouldn't say chiming in. They were quite good about speaking out. And now here we were 5 years later, almost exactly to the day, and we got vitamin C up by 220%. Now, it's still not the best. We obviously want more than 100 milligrams a day, but the point is that we reversed the energy. We had an effect there, and we turned the dynamics around to where it's headed the other way. Now, this will continue to play out with the upcoming Codex meeting. You know, these committee meetings tend to be annual, and the next Codex meeting on nutrition will be in Germany this November, and we'll be fighting to increase the RDA, the recommended daily allowance, for magnesium and for a good number of vitamin A and a good number of other nutrients that we think are being dumbed down. Because what we've noticed at Codex is at the same time that they are increasing the contaminant and toxin load, or allowing it to be increased, or trying to do that, they are dumbing down our protective mechanisms or our input that would allow us to protect ourselves from such things. So that's why it's so important for us to be there, and we'll talk a lot about this at the event this Saturday. So it'll be a great informational and social event for people to go to this Saturday in Manchester. Again, from 8 till 5, and for those who want to socialize afterwards, it'll probably go on into the wee hours of the night.
Well, just getting back to our original story, actually, Dr. Byers, that we were talking about at the start of the program, said that, of course, the best way to prevent cancer is to eat what he was calling good food. But that is increasingly difficult to obtain, and Codex doesn't seem to be doing too much, or at least the agenda that they are following, the pro-industrial agenda, doesn't seem to be doing too much to help in that regard.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, Mike, because I had forgotten about it. So I'm glad you brought me back around to it. Yes, eating good food sounds good. And actually, it's something we agree with, but perhaps my definition of good food differs from Dr. Byers and his definition. And in fact, what we found, their good food is usually doesn't include organics, does not include a real healthy spread, usually says avoid butter and use polyunsaturated fats, which is the exact reverse of what one needs to do. Doesn't include coconut oil, doesn't include a wider range of things, and that's what they call a good diet. But let me grant them for a moment, Mike, that they are talking about the same kind of diet that you and I would, or that many of your listeners would, that is a truly healthy diet. Even then, it's not enough to just simply eat good food. Even then, their advice or his advice is really dangerous. Because say you're in Plymouth, living in Plymouth, say you're living in Manchester, you're above the 33rd parallel. And what that means, 33rd latitude, excuse me, you're above the 33rd latitude. What that means is for probably 10 months of the year, it's impossible for you to get adequate levels of vitamin D. And vitamin D is so important in your body for at least 1,000 different enzyme pathways and mechanisms in your body, triggering certain genetic or gene switches to switch on and off, and so on, and you just simply cannot get it. Even if you're buck naked in the sun in December, and there is sun in December, and you're willing to risk the cold and aren't all covered up, you won't get enough because the latitude at that time of the year is too steep, and the ultraviolet rays that create vitamin D will not be able to penetrate through the atmosphere because it's about twice as thick a distance as in July there. So your only time to make vitamin D in your skin is really July, give or take about 2 weeks either side of July, if you're living in England. And for darker skinned people, this is an enormous difficulty. But even for light skinned people like me, it's tough.
Yeah, because,
So,
sorry, just because I think it was Dr. Graham Downing at the November conference last year mentioned that if your shadow is shorter than, if your shadow is, the shadow that's cast is shorter in height than you are, basically you're not getting sufficient vitamin D. And of course that is, as you rightly say, that is the case most of the time in this country.
yeah, that's very well put. I seem to recall hearing that, but I'd forgotten about it. But that's very well put. But it's easy enough to go by the calendar as well if you don't have a shadow to
Yeah.
even see. And a lot of times you don't have a shadow. So just that alone tells you that you need more eating food. And then what about vitamin C? I mean, you drink orange juice, but it's been pasteurized, and that heat destroys a lot of the vitamin C there. So even a normal diet, and even that won't provide adequate levels of vitamin C because we need so much more. Some have shown that you need between 5 grams and 10 grams a day. Well, at 60 milligrams in orange, you'd have to eat a heck of a lot of oranges to get that. And it's just not possible. And yet, that's what we evolved with. Through a genetic mutation, we, as humans and the other higher primates, lost the ability to manufacture vitamin C like a cat or a dog can do. And if you actually contracted that out and saw or calculated that out and saw how much we should be making, it would be on the order of minimum 5 grams a day, 24 hours a day, by the way, and or 10 grams a day. Some have said 10 grams. So that's an enormous difference between what we're making and what we could get in our diet, or should be making and what we could get in our diet.
Yes. Okay, well, look, Scott, we're just about out of time. Is there anything else you'd like to mention before we move on?
The main thing is keep in mind about the event this weekend. Please do come. It's very easy to get to there in Manchester. And also, please go to our website, thenhf.co.uk. Sign up on our email list if you can't go, or even if you can. And please stay in touch. And we always need volunteers. We need help to get our mission done. So we appreciate your support, yours especially, Mike, and those at UK Column. And all of you are very welcome to come to the event at any time. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Scott. Thank you very much. Hopefully have you on the program again soon. Brilliant. Thanks. Okay, just while we're talking about events, on the 1st of May, of course, another reminder of the Common Law event, which we're expecting lots of people to arrive at the Ye Olde trip to Jerusalem in Nottingham. Starts at 9 a.m. We don't know exactly what's going to happen that day, but it is going to be an interesting day. Remember, it's not a protest. It's something else is going to happen there. So please come along to that if you can. Now, yesterday, earlier on, I spoke to Mark Anderson as usual, and we were talking about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the sort of Pacific equivalent to the TTIP, which is the free trade agreement which is being negotiated between the United States and Europe. The TPP, is the similar free trade agreement being negotiated between the United States and various Pacific economies, and it's a pretty draconian thing. And really, what we're talking about is the potential end of national sovereignty completely, replaced with some kind of corporate entity with its own courts and so on. So this is the discussion that I had with Mark, and I will see you tomorrow at the same time. Well, Mark, welcome to UK Column News once again. How's things in the States?
Well, rather turbulent politically, but overall, personally speaking, pretty well.
So the big news, I suppose, is that Obama is attempting to push his executive authority on Congress once again. And he's attempting to create this fast track authority for the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP, which is like the Pacific sister to the TTIP, which is, of course, the US-European Free Trade Agreement, so-called. And really, it's a pretty staggering development that he's doing this, bearing in mind that he's demanding Congress signs this bill. But of course, they don't actually get to find out what the TPP is actually all about until after they've basically accepted it. So it's a pretty dangerous situation, isn't it?
In many ways, it's dangerous. It's troubling. You could attach a lot of adjectives to it, Mike. Of course, I'll mention briefly that right on the cusp of the G7 meeting in Germany and the Trilateral Commission meeting that's basically just wrapping up now in Seoul, Korea, and the Bilderberg meeting coming up in June in Austria, we have the TTIP and the TPP heating up so much. And these are the most far-reaching of trade deals in human history. And President Obama, what's most newsworthy and noteworthy is that while normally he wouldn't buck the trade unions and the labor unions and the main supporters of the Democratic Party and even Democratic members of Congress, it just shows you the power of the transnational banks and whatnot in the political process, because now Obama is going deadhead, full speed ahead, rather, against his own Democratic constituency, Democratic voters, labor unions, and Democratic members of Congress, many of whom don't want him to have fast track authority and certainly don't like these trade deals.
Can you just, because although many people will know what TTIP and TPP are in general, can you just explain this fast track aspect to it? Because that's something that a European audience and British audience wouldn't necessarily have come across. Certainly hasn't been reported in the mainstream press here, as far as I've seen.
Yeah, it's formally called Trade Promotion Authority, which is a more docile sounding name. Fast Track Authority is a more literal way to describe what is presidential power that is unleashed. In other words, the president doesn't have the encumbrances or the limitations he normally would have in the American checks and balances system. Congress basically says, here's a blank check to go ahead and finish the negotiations toward the Trans-Pacific Partnership and eventually the Trans-Pacific Trade and Investment Partnership. And we don't want to even worry about too much of what you're doing until you bring us back a deal. And we only get to look at marginal details of that deal. And we in the Congress will also agree to only vote up or down on whatever deal you bring us without any amendments allowed. So, as I've mentioned before on your show and in other outlets, it's strange that Congress was so worried about the president acting like a king and using executive orders to promulgate immigration policy. But when it comes to trade policy, suddenly it's okay for the president to be given these kingly powers. And in fact, they're throwing the gauntlet right at his feet and saying, yes, sir, we trust whatever you and the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative want to hammer out here. And we don't need to see it because we just trust you so much. It's quite ridiculous. And it's easy to lampoon, really. And it would be laughable if it weren't so serious. But that's essentially what it is, a blank check to finish negotiating trade deals.
And you think Congress is going to capitulate to this?
Well, Obama is making enemies out of his usual allies, as I mentioned, the Democratic members of Congress who are members of the same political party as President Obama, and the labor unions and other pro-democratic constituencies. So ironically, Obama, to the extent that he has opponents, are going to be the few independents in Congress and his own party. The Republicans, lock, stock, and barrel, except for a few rebels within their ranks, are falling all over themselves to grant the opposition party president, Obama, this authority that they didn't want him to have for immigration. And one of the best independents coming out against fast track authority is that rather boisterous Vermont independent, Senator Bernie Sanders, who many Brits and Europeans may have heard of. He's very outspoken, perhaps the most eloquent speaker in all of Congress. And he's come out and very strongly, in an article I've been working on, he's been saying quote, big corporations wrote the TPP behind closed doors. Incredibly, while Wall Street, the pharmaceutical industry, and major media companies have full knowledge as to what is in this treaty, the American people and members of Congress have been locked out of the process, quote unquote, from the independent Sanders.
And I mean, what do you perceive as the understanding of this among ordinary people in the United States? Is this something that they're aware of and are sort of fighting their congressmen over and women?
To a point, like if you look at the agricultural community, the farmers, on the one side, all the trade publications read by the farmers around here in the greater Midwest and whatnot are all pro-TPP and pro-Trade Promotion Authority because the Michigan Farm Bureau, the National American Farm Bureau Foundation, all these so-called farmer representative groups are all on the take. A lot of them are Washington lobbyists. A lot of them have been in bed or virtually in bed with transnational corporations. And big corporate farming is behind it, trying to get the grassroots farmer on board. But if there's any American resistance, it's mostly the younger set, the progressives, who don't want to give corporations this much power. And then besides American young progressives, it's usually the smarter ones among the agricultural community who aren't being bought and sold by these big farm organizations and are thinking for themselves. In terms of the broad American electorate, it's a tough call, but I myself and you, Mike, and others are among the media that are responsibly trying to call attention to this rather than tooting their horn in favor of Trade Promotion Authority, like the Washington Post, like the Racine Journal in Wisconsin, like the Baltimore Sun, like various editorial boards across the U.S., all singing in harmony in favor of giving Obama this authority.
Well, indeed, this is. I mean, the graphic that I showed at the beginning there is the Seattle Times, and it's their editorial, and they're absolutely clear: give Obama fast track authority in the Trans-Pacific Partnership negotiations. So you know that it's pretty hard to get an independent view, therefore, isn't it?
That's what you see across the nation. And the House Ways and Means Committee, which is the main congressional committee in Washington that deals with trade and related matters. There are other committees that do, but they're one of the main ones. Wisconsin Congressman Paul Ryan, a Republican who chairs the committee and is another one of these many Republicans that says, maybe I'll throw my hat in the presidential ring. Oh, maybe I won't. Oh, come on, you got to ask me about it. They're always taunting us. But that committee just published a news release, a news bulletin that I published or referred to rather for Counterpoint. And that news bulletin brags about and boasts about how the Cleveland Plain Dealer and the Seattle paper you mentioned and all these other papers are unanimously saying that Obama should have this blank check authority. I mean, how's that for objectivity? How's that for balance? What are the odds that one major paper wouldn't have an opposing point of view? You know, I mean, come on now. There's the fix is in, and it's time for independent media like ours to really speak out. American Free Press, UK Column, and others.
Is there a single founding father that isn't turning in their graves at this point?
Well, some people say that the founding fathers were more pro-mercantilist and pro-big business aristocracy than Americans were told. That's kind of a school of history that we won't go into. But Thomas Jefferson, at least the more populist of the founding fathers, would be very disturbed by this. People like that. And they believed in the middle class. They believed in the working man. They believed in, the common people. And this is an aristocratic thing from A to Z, these trade deals. And as I've mentioned in various news outlets, and I believe on the UK Column website for American Free Press, the TTIP, the US-EU deal, will create a whole new regulatory common market, a regulation regime outside the constitutions and functioning legal systems of the American and other systems.
Right. It really is the end of the nation state.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what these trade deals are. When you have the Bilderberg Group, the trilaterals, these trade regimes, what they're building is another government. It's just simply another governmental system altogether. Their own courts, their own, ways of settling disputes. Their arbitration courts, as they call them, where a lawyer one day can be representing a government, and the next day the same lawyers representing a corporation who's affected by that government. Conflicts of interest all the way. And yeah, it's another governing system altogether, which I think is the raison d'etre of Bilderberg and related groups.
Okay, and finally, Mark, I mean, what are the time scales for TPP? TTIP still got a bit to go, but is TPP, are the negotiations well down the road at this point?
You know, that's a good question, Mike. You see different quotes indicating a few months. One thing that I ran across in my studies and my writings was that the Racine, where is that at? The Racine, Wisconsin Journal mentioned, and I'm trying to find that here. Well, I can remember it. They mentioned that the TPP, if we don't get Trade Promotion Authority fast track for Obama really soon, if that doesn't happen, then they won't be able to push forward the Trans-Pacific Partnership because Obama won't have that authority. That'll slow everything down. And then things start running into the presidential election cult of personality that engulfs America, which for all its negative points would actually have a way of kind of bulldozing these trade deals off to the side and slowing them down, which would buy precious time for those who are opposing these trade deals. So,
well, would it though? Because of course Obama's not running, and sort of the other thing that's sort of on my mind is he really hasn't much to lose at this point as an individual. So
Right.
Are we going to see more of this type of attempt from the executive to bulldoze their way through the legislature?
You're absolutely right, except for that Wisconsin paper, the Racine Journal, is worried that absent that fast track authority, Obama, without anything to lose anymore, still won't be able to move this thing forward as briskly as he likes with his time running out. And then the machinations for the elections will take over, and that could divert the people's attention away from trade, which could be a bad thing, but it could also go the other way and kind of gum up the works. The main thing, Mike, if I had to boil it down, is opponents need, especially in America, they need to call Congress and express their views. And I won't tell you what to think, but I will tell you this. Anybody seeing this broadcast needs to think about the fact that this would be an undue amount of authority granted to any president, whether it's Obama or someone else, and that would upset the basic foundations of the American system. And if you happen to think these trade deals are a bad deal, then deny Obama that authority. Absent that authority, I think it would gum up the works too much for them to finish the trade deals in as timely a manner as they would like. At least that's the way it's looking right now. We'll keep an eye on this in the weeks to come as I reappear on your show.
Brilliant. Well, look, thanks very much again, Mark, for coming on. Any closing remarks? Any updates on Bilderberg, for example?
Well, I'm just making arrangements. Nothing real concrete. I don't want to speculate too much. I did time in our early conversation that they're no doubt keyed into these trade deals, because that's a big part of what Bilderberg and the trilaterals are about, is this internationalist, transnational regime, regulation, centralizing the fiscal function of banks, fiscal functions of governments, along with centralizing banking even more. This is always a part of the ongoing Bilderberg plan, even though they get into separate details each year that they meet. The other thing I'll mention is independent groups are suing the Presidential Commission, the Commission on Presidential Debates, because other parties are tired of being squeezed out of the presidential debates in America, where it's only Democrats and Republicans. And the other parties, Green Party, Libertarian Constitution Party, they want to be part of the official debates. And there's a lawsuit going on right now to break the Democrat-Republican monopoly in that regard.
Brilliant. Okay, well, look, thank you very much for joining us again, Mark. We'll hope to see you next Tuesday or next Wednesday as usual.